81a. A few lines down. Amar of Hamnuna. Amar of Hamnuna. So this, we had yesterday a lot about Rabbi Shimon. I have more about him. Rabbi Shimon's novel approach, that basically a slaughtering which doesn't result in consumption is not considered a halachic slaughtering. And therefore, you have examples where this prohibition of slaughtering the parent and the kid the same day is not going to apply because we don't view the first slaughtering as a slaughtering. So, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Omer Rabbi Shimon, Eino Soras Mano Bekachim. Says Rav Hamnuna, when it comes to the world of sacrificial offerings, this prohibition is not going to apply. Why not? Why doesn't the prohibition of slaughtering the parent and the kid apply by sacrifices? So, for example, let's say you have a mother and a child offering. You made them both. You sanctified them both, and now you want to bring them both as a sacrifice. So, according to Rav Hamnuna, Rabbi Shimon's going to say there's going to be no prohibition of slaughtering two in one day. Why not? My timer. Kevan dam Rabbi Shimon. Kevan dam Rabbi Shimon shchita she'ena reuya. Is it here?
Yeah.
So Kevan dam Rabbi Shimon shchita she'ena reuya lo shmei shchita. Rabbi Shimon says a slaughtering which is not fit, not going to result in consumption, lo shmei shchita. Therefore, so we understand if you take a holy animal and slaughter it outside the temple, that's invalid. So that's not going to be a halachic shchita. But why in this case is there a problem? Shchita's kachim nami, shchita she'ena reuyahi. So because we said once you slaughter the animal, so then you haven't thrown the blood up yet. So since you haven't placed the blood on let's see. So Masiv Rava has an attack. Osov as though a parent and the kid. Kachachutz, sacrificial animals that you're slaughtering outside the courtyard. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Sheni below Sase. The second one is going to have a negative violation of Shchutech. Inside the temple. So Rav is saying that, look, according to Shimon, Sheni below Sase, that the second animal here doesn't get kares because, well, we're not sure right now, but it sounds like because the first animal was slaughtered and that first animal was his parent. And according to Shimon, the second animal, you're not going to be liable kares for, only a negative commandment. Shahaya Rabbi Shimon Omer Kollel Roy level achers man hareyu below Sase. The ain bo kares. An animal that's going to be fit to go afterwards onto the altar is going to have a negative commandment, but it's not going to have kares. So we're going to ask on this because as long as the animal is fit to be brought inside the altar, if you slaughter it outside, there should be kares. But we're going to ask on that in a second. But Chachamim Omrim kol she'ein bo kares eino below saseh. If there's no kares, then there's no negative commandment as well. So now, those are the statements. You have two animals that are each imbued with sanctity. You took them both and you slaughtered them. It's a parent and a kid, and you slaughtered them both outside the temple. According to Rava, Rabbi Shimon says the second animal is only a negative commandment and not kares. And the Chum argue, and they say if there's no kares, there's not even a negative commandment. So now we're asking, hold on. The kashalon, this is very difficult for us. Kachim bachutz, sheni below saseh. 1 second. Why, when you have two sacrificial animals and you slaughter them both outside, one's a parent, one's a kid, is the second animal only a negative command? Kama mikta katil. Reb Shimon, you hold that the first animal, since it was slaughtered outside the temple, so then it's not considered a shechita, it's considered a killing. So the first animal, why is it considered a killing? Because you can't bring it inside the temple, because you're slaughtering it outside the temple, and therefore it'll never come to consumption. Rav Shimon's opinion is that if you something as a shechita, it's only if it's going to be brought to consumption. That's his reasoning. So this animal that's slaughtered outside the temple, which is going to be invalid, can never be brought to consumption. So what did you basically, all you did was kill it. So you killed it. So then if you killed it, the second animal, the kid, that animal right now, before you slaughtered it outside, is fit to be brought inside the altar. So why don't you get kares for it? It's a regular case of slaughtering an animal outside the temple. So kama miktakato, but sheni mikabu b'fnimu. So kares nami l'chayiv. If you hold that there is a prohibition of the parent and the kid, so then once you slaughter the parent, the kid is no longer fit to be brought inside the altar. So that we understand why there's no kares prohibition, because a kares prohibition is only going to be on an animal that's fit to be brought on the altar, and you brought it outside the temple. But according to Rabbi Shimon, that the first animal is not considered a shechita, just considered a killing. So then the second animal was fit to be brought on the altar. So why, when you slaughtered this animal outside the temple, is it not the regular prohibition of kares? Now, there's an interesting little bit of a catch-22 over here, because according to Rabbi Shimon, an animal that's slaughtered that's not fit for consumption is not considered a shechita. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a prohibition to slaughter, to do a shechita outside the temple. So one sec, you get stuck. If a slaughtering outside the temple is not considered a slaughtering, how are you ever liable for slaughtering outside the temple if it's not considered a slaughtering, right? So that the answer is that the Torah prohibited that act outside the temple. That's the act that the Torah prohibited, which we refer to as shchutei chutz, a shechita done outside the temple. So that's that. But for these cases, it's not considered a valid shechita in terms of the prohibition of the father, of the parent and the kid. Okay, but that's the problem. Why is the second animal not? Why is there no kares? So we have to amend the brisa a little bit. Avamar Rava, Avamar la Kidi, says Rava. Some say Kidi, name of a person. Chasuri Maxra B'Achitani. It's lacking a few words, and you got to interpret it like this. Kachim sacrifices Shnehem B'Chutz. So let's say you have Kachim, where you have two sacrificial animals and a parent and a child, and both of them you're going to slaughter outside the temple. So now, Lirabanan, according to the rabbis, Rishon Anush Kares. The first one is a violation, is a punishment of kares. It's a regular case of taking a holy animal and slaughtering it outside the temple. Sheni pasal u pater. The second one, there's no kares, because you can never bring it inside the temple because its parent was just slaughtered, so it's not fit to be slaughtered. So right now, for the next 24 hours, you can't bring the kid inside the altar, and therefore, if you slaughter it outside, so then you're not going to get kares. It's going to be it's going to be invalid, but it's not going to be you won't get kares. That's for the rabbis. Now, Rishon Ashkash Sheni Pasalu Pater. Yeah, I'm just skipping a few words. Le Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon, Shnehem Anushim Kares. Oh, they both get kares. Echad, so they both get kares because the first one is a slaughtering outside the temple, and therefore you're liable. But it's not considered a slaughtering in terms of the prohibition of the parent and the child in the same day. So the second animal is still fit to be brought on the altar, and therefore when you slaughter it, then there's going to be kares. Now, that's the first case. The next case, echad b'chutz ve'echad b'fnim. You have two sacrificial animals. One, you slaughtered outside the temple, and the child, you slaughter inside the temple. So the first one should be a regular case of kares, because you took an animal and you put it slaughtered outside the temple. And now what should be is that according to Rabbi Shimon, according to the rabbis, the child has a prohibition, that it can't be slaughtered. So therefore, it should be invalid. And according to Reb Shimon, there should be nothing wrong. So let's see if it plays out. So echad bachutz ve'echad bifnim, one animal outside, one animal inside. L'Rabbana, according to the rabbis, rishon anish kares, sheni pasol upater. According to the rabbis, rishon's anish kares. The first one is a regular case of kares, and the sheni is pasol upater. And the second one is going to be invalid and exempt from kares. Now Rashi points out, right now this brisa is not focusing on a prohibition of slaughtering the parent and the child in one day, because according to the rabbis, you're for sure going to be liable. It's just focusing on the do you get kares or not for slaughtering outside. So all the pater here means exempt, doesn't mean exempt totally. You'll be liable for the prohibition of the parent and the child. It's exempt from kares, just comparing it to the first case. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon, though, Rabbi Shimon, sheni kasher. According to Rabbi Shimon, the second animal totally fit. The parent gets slaughtered outside. According to Rabbi Shimon, that's not considered a shechita that's going to prohibit the child from being slaughtered that day, because you slaughtered it outside the temple, and therefore it'll never come to consumption. So if you take the child and go inside, as for your you slaughter the parent inside the temple, which should be totally fine. The echad b'chutz, and now the child is slaughtered outside. So now, according to the Rabbanan Rishon kasher, according to the Rabbanan, the first one is kasher, pater for sure, no kares, but it's totally fine. It's slaughtered inside. That's great. Sheni pasulu pater. The second, the child though, which is slaughtered outside, so that's going to be pasulu pater, meaning that's going to be invalid since the child is invalid to be brought as a sacrifice because the parent was slaughtered that day. Therefore, it's exempt from any kares, but it's still going to be obviously invalid as a sacrifice because you slaughtered it outside. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon, sheni below saseh, the second one has a negative violation. Now, here's where the difficulty starts. Here's our question. Right now, you had two animals. One, the parent was slaughtered inside the temple, like a regular sacrifice. So nothing wrong with that. What about the kid? So now, according to Reb Shimon, we're saying now in this brisa, there's a negative prohibition when you slaughtered the kid outside. Now, according to Reb Shimon, why is it only a negative prohibition? Why is there no kares? So now, the is daitach, and if you want to tell me, like Rav Hamnuna started off today by saying that ein osov as benon noeg bekachim, that according to Reb Shimon, you can never have the prohibition of the parent and child slaughtered in one day when it comes to sacrifices. So then, sheni amai below saseh. Why does this second animal? Why is there only a negative prohibition and not kares? So, sheni amai below saseh. The sulo kares nami lechayev. You should be liable also kares. So, according to Rav Shimon, how do we understand this? One animal was slaughtered inside. That's totally fine. But now the second animal is slaughtered outside, and there's only a negative commandment. There's no kares. Now, I think the underlying assumption here is that the first animal, when you slaughtered it, so it's either one of two understandings. Either the first animal that you slaughtered, the blood wasn't applied yet, so therefore it's not considered a valid shechita. So therefore, the second animal should be a regular kares prohibition, or yeah. So that's what it should be, but we don't say that for some reason. The brisa doesn't say that. So this Rav Hamnuna is up against this brisa. How do we understand this? Ela Amar Rava, Hachi Kamar Rav Hamnuna. that we're going to water down what Rav Hamnuna said, because he's against the Brisa. That which Rav Hamnuna said, he didn't mean to say there's no prohibition of a parent and a child in the same day by sacrifices. He just meant to say there's no lashes, but there is a prohibition. So, Haki Ka'amar Rav Hamnuna, Ein Malkus Osav Ez Beno Noi Bekachim. Why? Why is there no Malkus? Why is there no lashes? Because Kavan de Kaman de Lo Zarik Dam Lo Mishteri Basar, as long as you have not applied the blood on the altar, so therefore the meat is not fit for consumption, and therefore Be'idna de Kashachit Have Hasra Asafik, when you slaughter the first animal, so to get lashes, you have to get warned. But any warning that depends on a future event that we don't know what's going to happen yet, so is not considered a full-fledged warning. And this we had two opinions. Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish, and Makos, is that does a warning out of doubt, meaning we're not sure he's going to follow through with this, is that considered a good warning or not? There has to be some level of guarantee that you're going to follow through. That's interesting because you could have thought that an animal being slaughtered inside the temple, right, is pretty guaranteed you're going to go apply the blood, but we still consider that a hasra safek. The hasra safek lo shmei hasra, and according to this opinion, any warning which is dependent on a future circumstance, it's not a. It sounds like if a guy's about to pull a gun and shoot somebody, so then that warning is a good warning. But when you do the shechita here, if you're going to apply the blood, that's already considered more of a doubtful warning, and therefore you can't get lashes for such a thing. Now, that's the simple interpretation of our Gemara. Rashi happens to not like this, which is interesting because usually the Gemara always goes with Rashi's understanding. But Rashi says that yeah, Rashi bothered by that. One second. Yeah, Rashi's bothered by that. Let's focus on the second animal. So, on the second animal, when you have two animals that are both sacrificial, and you slaughter one of them, so let's assume the first one is slaughtered and the blood's applied on the altar. So now you're slaughtering the second animal. So our Gemara sounds like, well, when you slaughter the second animal, you don't know for sure that you're going to apply the blood. And since you don't know for sure that you're going to apply the blood, so therefore it's considered and you warn the person not to do it, that's considered a warning out of doubt, and a warning out of doubt is not considered a full-fledged warning enough to give you lashes. So Rashi's bothered by is that there's another reason why there's not going to be lashes over here. It's because the first animal was slaughtered properly, but according to Reb Shimon, now that we're watering down Rav Hamnuna, that there is a prohibition of slaughtering a parent and a kid the same day. Once you say that, so once the parent was slaughtered, so now the kid is not fit to be put on the altar anymore because its parent was slaughtered that day, and therefore there's no lashes because like this. The first animal, let's take a case. The first animal was slaughtered properly. Everything is good. You slaughtered it, applied the blood on the altar, you're good to go. Now you want to go and bring his kid as an altar. So Rav Hamnuna earlier stated, no such thing as it and its kid having the prohibition of slaughtering the parents and the child, according to Reb Shimon in the world of sacrifices. Fine. Then we prove that that's not true, so we're watering it down. And we're showing you that no, there is a prohibition, there's just no lashes. The question is, why is there no lashes? The Gemara says there's no lashes because, let's say when you slaughter the second animal, you don't know right now if you're for sure going to apply the blood. Therefore, it's only a warning out of doubt, and a warning out of doubt doesn't bring lashes. But Rashi's saying, no, that's not true. The reason why you're not going to apply the blood when you slaughter the second animal is because the second animal is not fit to be brought onto the altar because its parent was slaughtered that day. So according to Rav Shimon, we're watering down Rav Hamnuna. There is a prohibition of a parent and a child the same day. Once there's a prohibition, when the second animal is slaughtered, of course, you're not going to go apply the blood on the altar because there is no blood to be applied because it's not fit to be brought onto the altar. So the reason why there's no lashes is not because of it's a warning out of doubt that you might not go apply the blood. The reason why you're not going to do it is because it itself is not fit to be brought on the altar. So that's why it's a shchita that's not a proper shchita because you'll never come to applying the blood because it's not fit to be brought onto the altar. Okay, so either way though, our version of the Gemara is that when you slaughter the second animal, so it's considered you warn the person, but the warning is contingent on the applying of the blood. That we're not sure is going to happen. Therefore, it's a warning out of doubt, and a warning out of doubt is not considered a warning enough to get a person lashes. Okay, now that Rava amended Rav Hamnuna and said that there's no lashes, which at least our version of the Gemara says because of a doubt, because of a warning out of doubt. That's really Rava who's going according to his own reasoning. Where do we find Rava saying such a thing? Now, as the Rava l'ta'ameh, Rava is going according to his own reasoning as follows. The Amar Rava says, he Chulin u'bena shlamim. The first animal is mundane. The second animal is a peace offering. What do? Shachat Chulin, bi'achar kach shachat shlamim. Pater. So there you are exempt because now the first animal was mundane, slaughtered, done. The second animal, once you slaughter it, so now what happens? There's no lashes because you're not sure you're going to apply the blood. If you're not sure you're going to apply the blood, so therefore there's no lashes. So because it's a warning out of doubt. So that's why you're putter from lashes. You're exempt from lashes. If you do it the other way, though, first you slaughter the shlamim. Shlamim, the parent is a shlamim, a peace offering. So then now you slaughtered, apply the blood, you do the whole procedure. The achar kach chulin, and then the second animal is going to be is a mundane animal, and you slaughter that in the same day as the parent. Then you're going to be chayiv, because that when you are about to slaughter the second animal, and two witnesses come and say, if you slaughter the child, we're going to give you lashes. So that's a guaranteed warning because the first animal was already slaughtered and its blood was applied. So that's for sure is a regular case of a parent and a child, and therefore it's a regular case of a warning, and therefore if you do it anyways, then you get malchus. The Amar Rava, he chulin ubena ola. So Rava says, he chulin ubena ola. The Amar Rava, he chulin ubena ola. So let's say now the first animal, the parent is a chulin, is a regular mundane animal. Slaughtered it, fine. Now the child is an ola offering, fully consumed on the altar. So now, ubena ola. So now, lomi bayi shakat chulin akak shakat ola the pater. For sure, if you slaughter the first animal, that's chulin, that's mundane, and now you go to slaughter the second animal. So there you're going to be exempt from lashes because it's a slaughtering, which the warning is a doubtful warning because we're not sure about applying the blood on the altar. But ella afilu shachat ola. But even if you were to slaughter the ola, next page, the ola first, the achar kach shachat chulin, and then you slaughter the mundane, you should be exempt. Why? Because shchita kamai is alav shchita v'asachilahi. The Gemara is now bothered by an ola offering that's fully consumed. The person has no part in it. So Rav Shimon said any slaughtering which doesn't bring to consumption is not considered a slaughtering. So it should come out that even if you slaughter the ola offering first, and you do the application of the blood, and you offer it up on the altar, and now the child is a regular mundane offering, there should be no prohibition because the first animal had no consumption, so it shouldn't be considered a shchita for our purposes. But that obviously is not true. So what's the reasoning that it's considered a shchita? So says Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that even the eating of the altar is considered consumption. There's two kinds of consumption: the altar eating and not the alter ego, the altar eating and a person eating. Both of those are considered valid consumptions, and that's achilas mizbeach shmei achila. The altar consuming the ola offering is also considered a eating. My time damakra bim he'achol yochal mibasar zevach shlamav b'shtei achilas chasam medaber has a double language of eating. It's referring to two types of eating. Echad achilas adam v'echad achilas mizbeach. One is considered eating of a person, and one is considered eating of the altar. So really, it comes out that this today is a little bit in disagreement with yesterday, because today says that Reb Shimon really holds there is such a prohibition of in the world of sacrifices of a parent and a child. There's just not going to be lashes, either because it's a warning out of doubt, or maybe because Rashi says you'll never come to apply the blood because it's just not fit to be brought on the altar. But yesterday we said that the other opinion held that no, according to Reb Shimon, it's never going to apply. Not that it applies, but there's no lashes. It doesn't apply at all. Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of Reb Shimon, says the Mishnah, Hashochet, you slaughter an animal. Ve nimtza treifa. So I'm assuming that this is the child. I mean, you already slaughtered the parent, and now you go and you slaughter the child, and it comes out it's a treifa. It's really an animal that was never really fit at all. It has one of the fatal wounds. Okay. Hashochet lavodazara. Let's say you slaughter the let's just say the second animal. So yeah. So let's say the second animal. So either way you go, the first or the second animal, if you do it for avodah zara, or now here are a bunch of cases where they're not really fit for consumption at all. So an animal that's for avodah zara, it's prohibited to get any benefit from it. So once again, for Rabbi Shimon, that means we did a slaughtering that can't bring to consumption because it's now prohibited from benefit because it's idol worship. Shochet paras chatas. You also slaughtered a paras chatas, meaning the para aduma, the red heifer, which is also prohibited for benefit. Or the shoraniskal, a wild ox, is also prohibited that has to get stoned. Or that, you slaughter an ox that's supposed to get stoned. That's also prohibited from benefit. Or egla rufa is the calf that we break the neck when you find the corpse, an unidentified corpse between two cities. So that's also prohibited from benefit. Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon, there's no prohibition of the animal and its kid. And and chachamim mechayvin. They say you are going to be liable. And it sounds like liable, and you're going to get lashes. It's a negative prohibition. Now, what about a case of ashokeh ben isnabla biyado? You do a shchita, but let's say the knife was a little bit off. So we don't really, you end up killing the animal because the knife has a nick in it, or you were hanocher, or you're nocher, you really like sort of stab the animal, or hama'aker, you uprooted the pipes of the animal. All those cases is not considered a shchita. That's pater. Mishum osov asbeno. Even the rabbis will agree that's not considered a shchita. That's considered you did an invalid shchita. So it's interesting. Even the rabbis agree, which we would not have said this. We would have said as long as you kill an animal and its kid the same day, you're liable. But we see here, everyone agrees that if you do a shchita, but in the middle of the shchita, you messed up. You uprooted the pipes. The animal, the knife has a nick and ended up really dying from its wound and not dying from a shchita. So everyone agrees that that's not going to be the violation of osov asbeno, of slaughtering the parent and the child the same day. The debate is when you do a full-fledged shchita, it just can't be brought to consumption. And that's Rabbi Shimon's novel opinion that that's not considered a shchita for these cases. So, yeah. Okay. So now Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. So the problem is that our Mishnah said that according to the rabbis, you're liable. Sounds like you get lashes. Now, in Makos, where it talks about it, is that you have cases where you have two violations on you, and you have two punishments. So, for example, in this case, if you slaughter the child and you slaughter for idol worship, so now you're liable to get stoned and for lashes because you did avodah zarah, so that could get you stoning, and you also slaughter the child the same day as the parent. But we're not going to give you both. You only get the greater punishment. You get one. You get one punishment, and it's the greater punishment. So that which our Mishnah said you're liable for, and you're going to get lashes. So what case is that referring to? Amar Shimon Lakish, Lo Shana Ela Sheshakat Rishon Avodah Zarah. The first animal you slaughtered for avodah zarah. So all you have is one prohibition on you, stoning. The second one, V'sheni L'Shulchano, you slaughtered for your own table, for your own consumption. So now the first animal you slaughtered for skila, and the second animal you slaughtered, and there you get lashes. Aval Rishon. Okay, so practically we're not going to give you both, but the point is that you're still liable both. It happened at different times. Obviously, you could be liable. You could do today skila, and tomorrow you could be liable burning, and we'll figure out what to do. But the point is that in this case right now, aval rishon l'shulchano, the first animal that was slaughtered for your own consumption, the parent, you wanted dinner tonight. V'sheni lavod, the second animal was slaughtered for idol worship. So there we say that there's no lashes. Not that there's lashes, but we can't administer the lashes. There's no violation of lashes. Why? Did you not slaughter a child the same day as the parent? Says the Gemara, Pater, de kamle b'derabamine. Because when you do an act, and in the one act, you have two violations, we only give you the greater violation. So in this case, you did one act. In that act, you're liable stoning, and in the same act, you're liable lashes. There we say you're going to be exempt from the lashes because we give you the greater. Kamle, but the Rabba is the greater one. Rabba mine. Now, you could understand it is because whenever you have the same way you understand that when you have $200 in your pocket, included in 200 is 100, right? So you could understand that included in the stricter punishment is a lesser punishment. Skila is malchus times 1,000,000. So it's already included in that. That's maybe one way to understand. Or no. Or it's just, that's the rule. The rule is you get the greater punishment. I believe somewhere there's an interesting discussion of how do you understand this? Is the understanding that when Hashem set up the court system cannot punish you, in one act. If you did two things, they cannot punish you. It's a verse in the Torah. They cannot punish you for both of them. They can only administer the greater one. But you, for your own tshuva, they're still in heaven, that violation up there. And you got to take care of it. So when you're doing tshuva, you still got to take care of it. It's a rule. How do you understand this rule? It's a rule in the court. The court cannot administer two things. That's beyond their scope. They can do only the greater one. Or you say that no, a person themselves, when he does that one act, we view it as he himself only registers as the greater act and the greater punishment. But he himself can't have two punishments on one person at the same time for one act. He only gets the greater one. Yeah, we don't trust them. So that's the opinion of Reish Lakish. Now, Amar Le Rabbi Yochanan, he says, so this is interesting. Don't forget, they were chavrusas and best friends too, yeah? So Rabbi Yochanan says, Zu, Reish, that's what you said? Every 5-year-old knows that. Zu afilu tinoka shel beis rabban yodin osa. Every kid knows that. When you get two things, you only get the stricter punishment. So of course, when you slaughter the child, where there's lashes and stoning, you only get stoning. Everyone knows that. So it's like after Aleph base, it's the next thing you learn. So Ella pa'amim, but what it means says like this: pa'amim shafilu shachat rishon, even sometimes, even when you slaughter the first one for your own dinner and the second one for idol worship, you'll still be chayiv. You'll be chayiv malchus. You'll be liable for lashes. Wait 1 second. How can you slaughter the second animal and be liable for lashes? Aren't you liable for stoning, for doing idols? So says Rabbi Yochanan, kigon to asurbe mishum osov ezbeno, vilo asurbo mishum avodah zara. What happens when the guy's about to slaughter the child, and two people come and tell him, listen, and he's doing it for the sake of an idol. So two people come and say, if you do this, you're going to violate the prohibition of slaughtering a parent and a child the same day. But they never warned him that you're also going to be violating the prohibition of idol worship. So we can only administer a punishment if there is a warning. But if you only got warned for the child and not for the violation of the child being slaughtered on the same day and not for idol worship, says Rabbi Yochanan, that's a case where you're not going to have any stoning, but you will have lashes. You won't get stoning for idol worship because you never got warned for idol, and you can only get punished if you get warned, and you say, I'll do it anyways. At the same time, though, you did get warned for lashes, and that you did do. So therefore, that's a case where the second animal being slaughtered, you'll get lashes. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, he has more of a novel understanding. He holds Amar Kaven Dechi Asur Bei Pater. He holds like this. It's so intrinsic in the act that you did that since if you would do an act that if you would get warned, you would get the stricter punishment and not the lesser punishment, even when you don't get warned, you'll still be exempt from the lesser punishment. It's not a practical thing. It's the act you did is so severe. Proof being, if we were to warn you, you get stoned. And if you would get stoned, you can't get lashes. So you see how severe of an act you did. Therefore, even when you didn't get warned for the stoning, we're still going to exempt you from the lashes. And it's a verse. It's not pure logic. There's not verses, just how you understand the verses. So, and this Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish goes according to their own reasoning in Ksuvis. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said like this. This is one of those parts in Ksuvis that people spend a long time in yeshiva trying to understand. Amar chayve misas shogegin, when you do an act of that's liable for death penalty, but you do it shogegin, you do it inadvertently, simply understood, you never got warned, let's say. Ve chayve malchus shogegin, or you do an act where you're liable for lashes, but you do it b'shogeg, inadvertently, and davar acher, and at the same time, you do another act that you're liable to pay money. So, for example, you eat someone else's nevela. I go to your house, I heard you didn't slaughter properly, I want to eat a non-properly slaughtered animal. So right now, I have two things on me. I ate nevela, that's not good, and I stole your stuff. I owe you money. So in one act, I violated a negative prohibition, and at the same time, I owe you money. Or I take your Meiser Sheni and I eat it outside of Jerusalem. So I can't eat Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. I also can't steal from you. So in one act, I'm liable Malchus, and I'm also liable for monetary reimbursement. Like I have to pay you. So what happens in that case? So now Rabbi Yochanan Omer Chayiv. Rabbi Yochanan says you're liable the lesser punishment, meaning payment, because you only did the more severe punishment inadvertently. And Rabbi Yochanan says it has to be a practical thing. You have to actually be receiving the stricter punishment to exempt the lesser punishment. But if you do it inadvertently, you're not getting the stricter punishment. Reish Lakish says it's not a practical thing. It's more intrinsic in the act that you did. The act you did is so severe that that itself will exempt the lesser punishment. Reish Lakish Omer Pater. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Chayev. Why? The hollow asurbo. He never got warned for the stricter punishment. Reish Lakish Omer Pater. He says you're exempt. Why? Because if you would have gotten warned, you would have been exempt. But you didn't get warned, so therefore you're not exempt. Vitzricha. So now 1 second. Why do you have to teach me both of these halachas in two different places? You have death and money, or lashes and money, that's in Suvis, and you have here death penalty and lashes, that's in Chulin. So why teach both? Is it not the same thing? If you only taught in our case that you're exempt from lashes, you'd have said, because over here Reish Lakish says that because there's a the act you did is liable for death, and therefore that will exempt the lashes. But maybe over there, when it's only by money, it's death and money, or it's lashes and money. So that's like a totally separate thing. That's like a total separate. It's a monetary that you owe somebody money. That's very different. And here, the act you did is two very severe acts that Hashem said not to do. In the other case, where you're doing something which you're liable to pay money, so one is like towards God and one is towards the guy that you owe him money. So maybe there, Rabbi Sharish would agree to Rabbi Yochanan that you would not be exempt. The Iyatmar Baha Makama Rabbi Yochanan, but maybe only over there Rabbi Yochanan says Aval Baha. Maybe over here Rabbi Yochanan would agree to Reish Lakish that it's so the act you did, that one act of death. So that act is so severe that's going to exempt the lashes. So therefore, you have to teach both cases, that they argue in both cases, both when there's death and lashes, and where there's death or lashes and money. In both of those cases, they have a debate. Okay. Yeah. 2 minutes.